if you don't trust yourself to be the ultimate authority in your own life, in your own path, you will give all your power away to other people. And that serves everybody else much better than it will ultimately serve you.
You're watching the Wow podcast. I'm Jennifer Robin. This conversation is for informational purposes only and is not medical advice. Full disclosure is in the description. Today on the show, we have Ashley Jordan. She's a nationally recognized journalist, speaker, and author. Her bylines have appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian, and HuffPost. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about her book, Unhappy Achiever, Rejecting the Good Girl Image and Reclaiming the Joy of Inner Fulfillment. Welcome, Ashley. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell us about what you call your journey of unbecoming.
So for me, you often hear the word becoming used, but what I really discovered in my own journey is that it's not really, to me at least, about becoming. It's about unbecoming. And when I say unbecoming, what I mean is it's not about becoming someone else, because I think that often tends to have a connotation of I'm not good enough as I am. And so at a certain point in the future, I will be better. And I think that that's really a trap, actually, when it comes to self-love and being who we were born to be. And so that's why I like to use the word unbecoming, because I believe that we were born as everything we needed to be. And all we're doing really is peeling back all of the stuff that obscured the beautiful beings we were when we were born. The trauma, the conditioning, everything that sort of piled on to obscure our unique, beautiful essence, right? And so it's not about becoming something. It's just about stripping away all of the stuff that obscures who we already are underneath.
Beautiful. Like the divine being that we came in as, our perfect self. I like the way you said that. That's lovely.
Exactly.
So where did you get the inspiration and just the get-go to actually write this book?
So it's funny. I had been freelance writing for a few years and publishing with newspapers and magazines. And, I sort of stumbled into this journey of unbecoming about 5 years ago. And I always say, I wish I could tell you that, one day I woke up and I realized that I really didn't know myself and that I had this picture-perfect life that was externally perfect but inwardly broken, and that I needed to do something about that. That is not the way it happened. Really, I stumbled into it, I cracked open, and I was sort of set on this path of awakening and of realizing that at 37 years old, even though I had done all of the things that I was taught, good girls should do, and that if they do them, they will be happy and fulfilled, and they will have this shiny, beautiful life. And externally, my life was shiny and beautiful. I had done all of the things, I had all of the things, but I was empty inside, and emotionally I was numb, and I actually had no idea who I was underneath the life that I had built. And so I realized that I had a story to tell about what it looks like when you have built, the unhappy achiever life, the life where you were the good girl. You learned to earn love by being very good, meeting expectations, approval, achievements, being shiny, being pretty, right? And what it looks like when you get to the place where, as I say, the fairy tale was promised.
Yeah.
And you feel nothing, right? You don't feel the fulfillment that you thought you would feel when you get there. And so I wanted to write a book that would be every person's, every woman's literary best friend, on a journey like mine, right? Because when you are dismantling a life that you built from the outside in to rebuild one from the inside out, it is lonely. It is
Yeah.
messy, right? And so I wanted the book that I wish I would have had in that
Mm-hmm.
space. I wanted the book that women could open and be like, oh my gosh, if she can do it, I can do it too. If she went through this, that means there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not crazy for wanting
Yeah.
more than this, and knowing that there is more than this, and having the courage to really listen to that inner voice, inner wisdom, and follow my heart. So that's why.
Awesome. And so when you were actually going through this process of unbecoming, what did that look like in your life? And then I'm kind of curious how the friends around you reacted and what that dynamic, how that changed.
That is a great question. So I want to talk about what that looked like in my life. There's a chapter of my book called Selah. And I fell in love with that word, and I actually discovered it because I've had a big journey with grief in my life. And that's been a big part of my path of unbecoming. It was actually repressed traumatic grief from childhood that unexpectedly cracked open and really set me on this path. And that is in that space of grief where emotional trauma sort of erupted and knocked me down on the ground overnight. And so I had gone from unhappy achiever, right? I say in the book, borrowing from Hamilton, I was writing and living like I was running out of time, right? And I went from racing around and running through my life from one thing to the next to literally on the ground almost overnight. And in that space of cracking open emotionally, of being in a space where my body was riddled with so much emotional pain that the best I could do was just breathe and be. In that
Mm-hmm.
space of quiet, that is where I started to rediscover myself for the first time. So when we think about unbecoming, it is that space of silence. It is in the silence and in our own undoing
Yeah.
actually that we find ourselves again for the first time. That is what unbecoming to me looks like in its purest form. It is
Mm-hmm.
surrender, right? It is the release of manic doing and everyday racing around to start to find stillness, enough
Mm-hmm.
stillness to start to hear our inner wisdom and our hearts again. And that is messy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is messy. And, I always say I was the girl who never cried. Starting at the age of even 6 years old, I remember shattering my elbow and not shedding a tear. I had already learned that strength, that first of all, for some reason, it wasn't okay to do that. And that strength looks like showing no emotion at all. I can survive really hard
Mm-hmm.
things and be stoic. That's
Mm-hmm.
strength. And so I say the reward for that was that, at 37, I got to cry every tear I never cried. And I don't recommend that, but sometimes that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
That's unbecoming. And so when you ask about friends, the more that I inhabited my suffering and started to reconnect and rediscover myself, come home to self is the way I often describe it. It was like I went from seeing the world in black and white to technicolor again.
Ooh, yeah.
Like suddenly I started to look around and there was magic that I could see and feel that I had never seen or felt. And not so much that I didn't know it, but that I had forgotten it, right?
Yeah.
I had forgotten it. And So it was so interesting because the more I became me
Mm-hmm.
authentically, and I felt like this is great. And I think this happens to a lot of us on these journeys, right? We kind of start to reawaken to ourselves and we're like, this is amazing. I want to tell everybody. I know, like, I am Ashley Jordan 2.0. Like, my friends are going to love me. Like, I can be a
Yeah.
better friend. I can be a better mother. Just a better me. But what's so confusing and painful at first is that not everybody loves that new version of you. And in fact, I had friends who were, I considered dear, close friends who were like, who are you?
Yeah.
And
Because they like the old you, right?
right. And that was the version of me that they knew. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the version of me that they had co-resonance with. And so I always explain it this way. I had to learn, even though I'll say those friendships falling away were deeply painful for me
I
at the
bet. Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah.
Almost, even, I'll even say like even a traumatic in its own way. I was heartbroken. I couldn't understand it. I really struggled, but now I've realized that it doesn't make them good or bad, right or wrong, or me good or bad, right or wrong. It's just that we had a co-resonance when we came together in relationship. And when I changed, I was on a different rate. It's like we were both on the same radio station.
Yeah.
And then I
Yep.
was on
Yep.
Yep. I was
Yep.
on a different one. And in order to meet in the same radio station, like somebody had to go up and
Yeah.
somebody had to come
Yep.
down. And it was very uncomfortable for
Yeah.
everyone involved. And so it's like we have to, it's so helpful to realize it's not a rejection of
Mm-hmm.
you. It's that they don't know that version of you and there just isn't co-resonance. It doesn't mean even that there will never be. It just means at this point
Yeah.
you're at different places in your own journey, right? And we get to where we get to in our journeys in our readiness. And
Mm-hmm.
nobody can convince us otherwise. And so that's okay. But to your question, unbecoming can be really messy and
Yeah.
hurtful. And when those relationships fall away, it's really hard. But within a year, I'll say new relationships came in.
Yeah. You attracted.
Yes. And
Yeah.
those,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, the sisterhood that I have now is unlike any I ever knew before. I did not know the love that can exist between
Mm.
women, the soul level love that is just as powerful in its essence as any romantic love would ever be, right? And it's just a different expression of
Mm-hmm.
love. But it is just as true, unconditional, heartfelt, soul nourishing, and I'll say one of the most liberating forms of love that we can know, truly.
Yeah. And as you moved from, we'll say, less doing, busy, crazy, running around to more being who you are, what happened? Because the other thing I was thinking of friends and relationships is how people have their own expectations for what we're going to be and what we're going to do. And when you adjust your life for the better to benefit you, sometimes the ripple effect on the people around you, it's like they were expecting something else. Do you have anything to add about that?
Oh,
Expectations?
absolutely. There's a great story in the book where I talk about how I had a friend who was very intuitive say to me early on in my journey, you have a hard time accepting love. You struggle to receive it even now. And that was a truth. And when we hear a truth like that, like, oh my God, it hits us. It's like a kick straight in the gut. You're like, ooh, like I did not identify that for myself, but that is a deep truth about myself. And I'm ready to look at that now. And I remember saying to one of my friends at the time who would fall away shortly thereafter, I said, I shared with her what I had been told and that I was really sitting with that. And she looked at me just befuddled and she said, "Really? Because I don't think you have a problem with love at all. You just give and give and give love."
Never mind, get some back and receive it and take it in.
And there was this moment where I remember just looking at her and thinking exactly that. Yes. And now I'd like to see what it would be like to receive it too. And so when I sort of entered that, place, to your point about expectations, I wasn't fulfilling that role for people anymore. I wasn't just giving and giving and giving, performing and performing and performing. Yep. I wanted balanced relationships, reciprocal relationships that flow like water wheels, right? Like ebbing and flowing and natural rhythms, and not just one person pouring out constantly, because it is so much easier. I always say it's so much easier to give for most of us. We are much more comfortable in that space.
Well, it makes us feel good too, right? It makes you feel like a good person. You're giving to others. And a lot of times that also leads to totally neglecting ourselves in every way.
Yes, 100%. But I think also if we get really honest with ourselves, often what I realized for myself was it was much more comfortable for me to give for a couple of reasons. One, I can control that. I could control what I give, right? And I learned to use, with the help of a therapist, I identified this, but I had learned to use being good, giving, being really pleasing to protect myself. You will like me if I show up this way. You will love me if I show up this way.
That's a common thing, especially for women.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So common. Yeah. That's such a part of our conditioning, right? And so true embodied self-love requires learning to receive love and to say, I don't have to perform, right? I give when I authentically feel like I'm inspired to, and it's from my heart. But I also value receiving and being in relationship with those who also give and receive. And so we can have these reciprocal, balanced relationships where we're both nourished. And sometimes, sure, one might need to receive more than they can give, and vice versa. And that's normal. But it's not just someone giving and giving and giving love without receiving it in return.
Have you heard the term energy vampires?
I have.
Because that's what that makes me think of when you're so giving of yourself that then there's nothing left, almost, you know?
Totally. And I think especially for women, especially for mothers and daughters, we learn, it's like mothers and martyrs.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I want to say that too, because I shudder at the term energy vampire, because there's like this feeling of someone's taking advantage of me. I'm being victimized.
True.
Right.
Because we're doing it by choice.
Right.
Yeah. That's true.
We get something out of it too. Yeah. Right. And so it's like I co-create that with someone. And the great thing about that is I'm not a victim. I can change it. I can decide for myself that I don't want to do that anymore. Yes. Right. And so I think that that's so helpful to remember, because when we hear people talk about, being an empath and things like that, that's such a beautiful thing. And it's so great to know that about ourselves. But we can also, we can take our power back where we have given it away. We can reclaim, I love the word reclaiming in these journeys, we can reclaim what we've lost by adopting new ways of being in relationship with ourselves and others.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Tell us some of the ways we can start being in relationship with ourselves and start really paying attention to what our inner self actually needs and wants to be.
When I started this, I was walking the wilderness on my own. I did not know what was happening to me. I always say all you need is start taking some time to yourself. 5 minutes a day. If you can start finding 5 minutes a day to just sit in silence, meditate, walk in nature, read a book you love, do something that you love, because for most of us, we lose that connection with ourselves when we stop carving out time to remember ourselves, right? To be us in the most authentic expressions. And I always come back to what did you love to do when you were 8 years old? Think about what you loved to do when you were 8 years old, because when you were 8 years old, you did what you did with abandon. You didn't have a boss on your back, or, you weren't so bogged down by other people's expectations and approval. You just did what you did for the sake of joy, right? And so what did you love to do? Because often there are clues about not only what brings you joy, but also about what you were born to do. And
Yeah.
so return to some of those things. If that was drawing, start drawing again. If that was dancing, start dancing again. Find some time for you again, even if it's only 5 minutes a day, and start there. And that's what that is the easiest entry point, I think.
Perfect. Perfect. Tell me more about writing this book and how your journalism career, impacted what you ended up with.
Sure. So I think that the truest pieces of art that come from us are written, and I always put it this way, is if we're doing it from a place of dancing like nobody's watching.
Okay.
Like we're really not thinking about, who's going to receive it. We're just thinking about speaking from the soul, from the heart, from the deepest, purest place inside of us. And so that is how I wrote this book. The concept of writing a book had come up a few times before I started writing Unhappy Achiever. But inside, the thought of that was like, I could do that now, but I'm not feeling like it's time. And even some potential ideas from books came about from even articles that I had written, and they weren't bad ideas, right? And I would say they were even, one of them in particular was even a book that probably needs to be written, and I could have written it, but I was just like, I don't think this is it. Like, I don't feel that. And when even the title Unhappy Achiever came, it was like, oh my God. When people hear it, they're like, me too. And for me, it was like, that is the lens through I can view almost my entire life story, right? And that I know so many people can relate to. And so that just came naturally. And then when it was time to start writing the book, it felt like, and this is the way I think that intuition and inner knowing work, it just felt like an internal breath, like, oh, it's time to write this book. Like, it's time. Yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And then I just started. It wasn't like I had to think about this for, weeks and months and analyze. It was like, I just know this is the book I'm meant to write. And now it's time to start writing it. And so I did. And it was, writing a book, it's funny to ever describe it as an easy process, right? It's a labor of love. It is, so I would say if I were to describe this in feminine terms, the feminine side was, I intuitively know it's time to do this. And then it flowed through, it flowed through me. It flowed from me. I never knew the chapter I was writing next until I finished a chapter, but then the next one came, always. Like, there was no delay. There was no writer's block. It was,
Wow.
yes, it was
Okay, let's just acknowledge that for a moment. I've never heard that from a writer ever. So-
it was, it is the absolute truth. And there was a time where, in my own journey, I was going through something and I needed to take just emotionally like about a month off from writing. But as soon as I was ready to step back in, I just stepped right back in. It
Oh,
started
wow.
again. And I'll say even the path to publication was magical. The right team at the right time, everything fell into place. So it was just one step after another, in perfect timing. And I was just taking care of every step of the process. I got to write the book I wanted to write from start to finish with the team I wanted to work with, to an eerie degree, like just a magical degree. I mean, I literally held a book in my hands 2 months before I signed with my publisher. And I was like, I want my book to feel like this one. Like, I love even the way the pages of this book feel. And 2 months later, I was in a meeting with the publisher that would become mine, with the editorial director of that publisher. And literally, she started talking about the books she worked on. And she turned around and she goes, "Have you read this one?" And it was the book that I held in my hand
Oh,
2 months
wonderful.
earlier. And so
That's
I
cool.
worked with the team that published that book, that worked on that book. I had the same editorial and marketing team for my book. So it's magical when we are working from our inner wisdom and our inner knowing. It doesn't always necessarily look exactly the way that we think it will, but it's like we are guided. Every step of the journey kind of falls into place for us in ways we could never even imagine. And so from that perspective, it was so easy and magical. Now, from the masculine perspective, I also had to show up and write a book proposal, right? And take all of these steps, the hard work that has to happen to create a book and birth it into existence. And so the advice that I would give to anybody thinking of undertaking a project like that is, I just said, whatever your time of day is, like, these are the times I show up to do this. I show up to write this book. And I released, like, some days when I show up and set my alarm from, for me, it was 6 to 7 a.m. a lot of the time. And then maybe two more blocks of time in the day, like 1 hour blocks. I silence everything else and I show up at these times and I let what's meant to come. And if nothing comes, okay, fine, I showed up. Something always came, by the way. But sometimes it was, a paragraph or two. Sometimes it was a page or two, right? It varied, but so many books have been written in 1 hour a day. And so what I always say is, it's about also committing to yourself and your creation and showing up for it consistently. And so that's the balance, I think, that, we have to find to create from the deepest places and parts of ourselves.
Ever listen to a podcast with great content but wish the audio quality was better? Even with expensive equipment, audio recordings pick up everything. Appliance hums, barking dogs, notification beeps, and when listeners are wearing headphones, they hear all of it. Excessive ums and repetitive words can be really irritating too. Would you rather hear audio like this?
No matter how much somebody cares and how well-meaning they are.
Or polished like this?
No matter how much somebody cares and how well-meaning they are.
Every podcast deserves the spa treatment. With balanced audio levels and distractions removed, you can hear the difference immediately. Know a podcaster who'd appreciate a fresh perspective? I offer free podcast consultations where I share specific ideas to improve their show. Send them to podcastspa.com. That's podcastspa.com. Your referrals help support this show. I appreciate you. Have you always been able to tap into your intuition, or did you develop that through this process? Because it sounds like you're really clued in to listening to your inner self, or whatever you want to call it. how did that develop? And what are your practices that you do to maintain that and to nurture that connection?
So that is such a great question. And it's also great for anybody who's like, I don't feel like I am connected to my intuition at all, because I wasn't. And I write about this in the book too. I remember sitting with my therapist at the time and saying to her, I don't know what's happening to me. Am I losing my mind? Like, am I going crazy? Like, I don't know what is happening right now. And she said, well, what does your heart say? You know the truth, Ashley. She's like, you have the power to know things. And I just looked at her completely puzzled and like, what are you talking about? And she was like, what does your heart say? And I was like, my heart?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, that is an organ that pumps blood throughout my body, but it doesn't tell me anything. Like, that is something people say. Like, I live here, right? I live here. And I operate from that place. And then I ask people, everyone outside of me, what they think. And then I weigh my options and
why do we do
analyze.
that? We all do that, right? We want everyone else's opinion like a blessing, like, yes, you're on the right track. Sorry.
Yes. And which is so funny to me, because I always say, like, that's the thing about these journeys. There is no outside expert. You, only you alone are the sole best expert in your own path, in your own journey. And it's hilarious that we look outside of ourselves like, who else can tell me what to do with my life better than
I know. Like everyone else is the expert, right?
Like,
but, that's how we were raised.
Yes.
I mean, from little kids, we learned, you trust the authorities and you do what they say and your teacher and your parents and so on and so on.
Which, wow, that really serves a system like ours very well.
Yes, it does.
And if you don't trust yourself to be the ultimate authority in your own life, in your own path, you will give all your power away to other people. And that serves everybody else much better than it will ultimately serve you. And so how do you reclaim that power? How do you reconnect with your inner wisdom, with your own heart? I mean, I truly was like, I don't know where do I find it again?
Yeah.
And so to find it, it was just as I started just taking walks in nature. And it wasn't like this conscious thing, like I'm going to do this as a means to an end. It was like, I didn't know what else to do, but I just knew that I'd started going out for a walk and that I would receive just a sense of connection, clarity, peace that I didn't have before. That magical experiences and awarenesses would happen to me just by walking around the block in my suburban neighborhood, right? And I hadn't connected with nature since I was a little girl who would go into this little strip of woods in my backyard. And I recently really started to think about how I would always say, I'm going in the woods. And that I loved the woods. And now I love the woods. And I can walk into a forest and be completely disconnected from myself and leave and feel completely balanced and at peace.
Yep.
And so how do you reconnect with your intuition? Again, you start taking some time to be with you. You start whether that's walking in nature, whether that's sitting alone with a warm cup of coffee and a cozy blanket. You start carving out even 5 minutes a day to start listening to your own inner wisdom, to start meditating, to start even reading books. Even books can be a path back. I hesitate to say that a little bit because knowledge is not wisdom necessarily, but for those of us drawn to literature, books have been so life-changing for me. And always, the right book always comes at the right time, I've found.
Yeah. And sometimes words will just jump off the page that you need to hear.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I get that.
Exactly.
But I love that you brought up going out into nature, because usually when I ask this question, people often are leading with meditation. And meditation can be difficult for a lot of people to get into. Like they feel like they don't know what they're doing or they can't stop their mind. But taking a walk, everybody can do that, or almost everybody can do that. So that's a lot more accessible. It's interesting that you say that. I've just recently started a couple months ago, finally getting back on my walks because I had a really bad knee injury last year. So I take a good 2-hour hike every weekend
Yes.
in the woods, and it's gorgeous. And yes, when I walk back to my car, I do feel more balanced. I'm not having the full experience like you, but yes, I think that's a great way for people, maybe not instead of meditation, but if you've tried meditation and it's not working, go for a walk. Try it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had points where I was so riddled with anxiety that I would try meditation. I was like, oh, this doesn't work, right? I can't do this. Like I can't, because when you're in that place, when you're so disconnected,
Yeah.
sitting still is torturous. Like it feels like you have bugs crawling under your skin, right? You're like, no, my ego needs the distraction, like because I'm avoiding myself, and I learned to do that, and I've learned to avoid discomfort and all the stuff inside that I'm not ready to reckon with. And so being told to sit alone in silence is the equivalent of sitting there with bugs crawling under your skin. It's torturous. And
when I first started doing that, I was like, all I'm doing is running through my to-do list, and like my brain is elsewhere, and I couldn't get it to like just be quiet.
Yes.
So I know there's people like that out there.
Yes. And so I see that I was one of those people. And I really think that then it becomes, okay, what can you do? What does feel good right now? And remembering there are no right or wrong answers to that question. And what's right for you will change and evolve. I sometimes meditate a lot. Sometimes I don't meditate at all. You know,
It's like seasons, right?
Right.
Seasons of your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes what feels good to me is just sitting in peace in the morning with a warm cup of coffee, right? Reading a book. There's a particular book that I'm really drawn to, but also for those who are like, I don't have the budget for therapy. I don't have the budget to go see, a healing practitioner or join a yoga studio or any of those things. I always say that's okay, right? Sit in silence, walk in nature, and find, or rather attract by being you on your journey, some wise women. The sisters who've come into my life in the past 5 years and the wisdom that they give to me just by sharing our journeys is invaluable. Like one piece of wisdom from a wise person in your life can be the equivalent of 20 therapy sessions, right? Like you just need authentic connection in your life too. And so once you start to attract that, wow, like that costs you nothing, but it's worth everything.
Yep. One thing I'll add to the outside is if people aren't familiar with grounding, take your shoes off as much as you can. Usually when I end my hikes, it's very sandy here underneath the pine needles and everything. So basically the route back to the car, there's maybe 15 minutes worth of just almost pure sand. So I always take my shoes off. I wish I could hike the whole way like that, but I can't.
Yes.
But even sitting in your backyard, putting your feet on the ground while you're enjoying your coffee, reading your book, whatever, is a great way to connect with nature as well.
Absolutely. There's some imagery I always use, and it's bare feet on green moss. Like when you lose yourself, just imagine bare feet on green moss. It's that feeling of finding your center. And that's where we not only find ourselves, but we find our own peace, our own stability, our center. And that's power. That's the thing. When we cultivate that for ourselves, nobody and nothing can take that from us, right? I think that is really part of heaven on earth, right? And like that is the thing that we're all trying to get back to. And we're taught to do that with things, right? That if we look
external,
at...
yes,
Yes, that will give us that. But we're not looking for fleeting happiness. That does not satisfy our soul. What satisfies our soul is internal fulfillment of cultivating joy and peace within, right? And when we start to do that within, it naturally starts to become more and more reflected outside of us. And I think that that's the beautiful thing. That's what makes the unbecoming so worth it.
Beautiful. Let's jump back into the book and tell me a little bit about the common masks that we as women are wearing.
One of the masks that good girls who grow up to be good women.
Good girls.
Good girls. I'm a very good girl. Oh my God, I was a very good girl. And I worked very, very hard to be a very good girl. And gosh, I always say that good girl mask was so boring compared to being my authentic, empowered self. It is so much more fun to be an empowered woman than it is to be a good girl. It is so much more fun to be a witch than a princess. Right. And I've been both. So it's just the absolute truth. So the mask of the good girl is perfectionism. It is pleasing. It is approval. It is achievement. It is doing all of the things we're taught to do. It is being the good girl who grows up to be the dutiful daughter, right? The perfect wife, the perfect mother, none of which actually exists, which causes us so much pain, by the way, and frustration and self-hate. And so when we start to strip all of that away and just say, who am I really? And we start to embrace the messiness in us, the being perfectly imperfect. And I also want to talk about the mask women feel they need to put on. You know, for me, being criticized for how I looked as a child was so painful. And I felt very unseen. And then when I sort of shape shifted into this other version of me, suddenly it was like everyone sees me. Suddenly they're commenting on how pretty I am and they like me. Suddenly boys liked me.
I was going to say, was this like a junior high to high school transition, or when did this hit you?
Like right before junior high transition. And so,
okay, so a little earlier.
Yep. And literally it couldn't have been more magnified because not only did boys suddenly like me, but my whole friend group changed. I was I went from not being noticed at all to the most popular girl in the class being like, you can be my friend. And I was like, oh, like, right?
Holy moly. And I can so relate to that.
Yes.
I did a blog about that a while back.
And
interesting.
So it was like, I remember literally my young self saying internally, I will never go back to being what I was because that hurt. Nobody saw me, right? And when I am shiny, when I wear this mask, people like me, right? People love me. Yeah. People see me. It's painful to be unseen. And I equated that with being perfect, being pretty. I have to wear my makeup this way. I have to do my hair this way. I have to be shiny. And it's funny, I'll say even a year ago, I wouldn't have showed up on a podcast without full makeup. And even, after all of the work and all of the journey, even in the past year, it's like, I just can't even put on that mask anymore. I'm like, that's not, like, even when I try, it just doesn't work in the same.
Because it's not you.
It's not me anymore. Yeah. And so even the mask we wear in terms of makeup and hair, and it's not that there's anything wrong with those things. It's when it feels like we have to do it to be accepted, to be seen, versus when we choose to do it because we just feel like adorning ourselves. There's nothing wrong with adorning yourself, right? But the freedom comes when you say, I can just show up and be seen as me, and that's beautiful. That's magnetic. That's powerful. Like, I radiate with just my face. That's revolutionary, and And it also, when it actually starts to feel better to show up that way than it does wearing the old mask that used to make you, was an illusion of being seen, right? Because it was for someone else's gaze. It was for someone else's approval.
It's one of my pet peeves.
Yes. Yes. So
this is not what I look like most days.
Right. Right. I had a very intuitive friend say to me a year ago, she said, your message will be even more powerful and more resonant when you start to show up like just even without like makeup, just as you. And I remember thinking to her, I love you. Thank you for that. That's very nice. But I don't have to do that. And I don't really see that happening. And now here I am a year later, and it's absolutely happening on every level. But I also realized, I'm single. And so when we talk about unmasking, I've realized I've, had my own journey to partnership, which will be part of the next book. And I realized that this deeper unmasking needed to happen because the aligned partner for me can't find me when I'm wearing that other
You would have
mask.
attracted the wrong person.
Right.
Right.
And indeed
Absolutely.
I was. Indeed I was.
Yeah.
They all taught me something, and I'm deeply grateful. And that journey's been magical in itself. But I've realized, no, when you are the truest expression of you, your people, your partner, your friends, your beloveds can find you. But they need to be able to see you beyond the mask, right? You need to be willing to be seen.
And another thing that's sweet about that is when more of us women start doing that, guess what? It takes off the pressure to those women who have not come to this conclusion yet. I think it's going to have a ripple effect. I mean, I used to have a whole bag of makeup, I remember, probably since high school. And now I put on cover up and a little bit of powder to do a podcast and some lipstick just because we're on camera, and that's it. But if you just knocked on my door one day, you'd see me in my yoga pants and my t-shirt and I like a clean face. It feels good to me. I don't like the way the makeup and the stuff even feels on my skin. Ugh. But anyway, if more of us show up like that, guess what? If the woman who knocks on my door sees that I'm fresh-faced and comfy, she can relax, right? We give each other permission to relax and be ourselves. I think the more of us that step into that.
And I think it's so interesting that the more we start to see ourselves differently, the more we see others differently. Listen, I judge no woman who is at a different place on her journey because, as I have said, I've been there, okay, and back. Lots of makeup, I mean, my children would comment on how long it took me to get ready. And now I think to myself, gosh, I honor that version of me and where she was. But I'm also thank God this happened because I don't want to spend all my time getting ready. That's not how I want to spend my precious human life. But I realized that now when I see others wearing the mask I used to wear, I used to look at that as, aspirational. I need to look like that, right? That's how I'm supposed to look. And now I see it and I'm like, ooh, I don't want to look like that. The faces I'm drawn to now are the faces who are showing up unmasked.
Even with my podcast guests, I think everybody's been not heavy makeup. But I feel like we relax more when we're I'm like, oh, okay, she's like me. She's cool. And I don't have to pretend. I don't have to, many of us have lived our whole life trying to pretend or be this thing that we're told we're supposed to be.
And that's what's so sad, because I had a therapist say this to me early on in my journey. She said, Ashley, you've learned to use perfectionism to earn love. You do it because you want to be loved. She's like, but the truth is that perfectionism is a barrier to love because people put you up here and they don't feel like they can really connect to you. And that is what's so sad about it, is that we're conditioned to wear perfectionism as armor for protection and to earn love. But really, it doesn't do either of those things for us, right? It actually prevents authentic connection with others and heartfelt connection with others because they don't feel like they can even relate to us.
Yeah. Well, I'm really enjoying our conversation, but I know we're running out of time. Is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you think is important to mention?
The one thing that I always end with, and I think that the point of Unhappy Achiever is that everyone at a certain point in their journey realizes that they are beloved just because, not by virtue of anything that they'll ever do, but because of the beautiful being they were when they were born. And that's enough. That's enough.
Wonderful. And other than your current book and the one that you're working on, what are ways that people can work with you, interact with you? Where can we find you?
Absolutely. You can find me at my website, ashjordan.com. You can also find me at unhappyachiever.com. And you can find me on Instagram at Ms. MS Ash Jordan.
Wonderful. I can't wait to read your book. I've got quite a list going here of to reads, but this sounds like a very important one. Thank you so much for being here and spending time with us today. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I've had a wonderful time with you, and thank you so much for having me. It was a delight.
Thanks for watching. Let me know what your biggest takeaway was. Just drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more.